Okay.
Mics are hot.
Okay, we're ready to go. Good evening. The Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Stewart.
Here.
Trustee Monahan.
Here.
Clerk Vorba here. Trustee Dorshevitz.
Here.
Trustee Kermy.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heisey.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Very good. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to invite Tim Boyd to lead us in the pledge. Tim is on our zoning board and is an all-around great guy, so.
Say no.
Take it away.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, item D is approval of the consent agenda. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021.
Thank you very much. All those in
Second.
favor seconded by Trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, item D is approval of the consent agenda. Comments or questions? Okay, then I need a motion on that.
Mr. Supervisor.
Clerk.
I move for the approval of the consent agenda for the regular meeting, Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item E is public comment, limited to 3 minutes. This will not be your only opportunity for public comment during the evening. There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting, and we do encourage public comment on individual agenda items as long as they are germane to that particular item. So is there anybody at this time? Sure.
No.
I really want to encourage everyone to speak at this time. Absolutely serious. You only get 3 minutes. N-O-W. Line up, if you wish.
So my name is Barbara Cordy. I live on Powell Road, and I'm here to really talk about two topics because I see some hypocrisy happening. Today, one of your agenda items is to talk about changing the zoning of some property off of Ridge Road, which the developer wants to make into more than twice as many houses with very small yards. But 2 weeks ago, the township was talking about a tree ordinance, and they want to provide for the protection, preservation, and reforestation of the township of Plymouth's tree canopy trees and woodlands. And so that seems to me to be inconsistent to take one of the last remaining undeveloped pieces of property, which I'm fine with building houses the way it is zoned. Apparently there was some planning when it was zoned, but now you want to rezone it so that there are more than twice as many, taking out the trees that are there. So I asked for some consistency. I wrote you all an email, didn't get the courtesy of a response from any of you about this topic. Mr. Dorshevitz did respond to a prior email telling me that the tree ordinance seemed to be directed at new development, but obviously not if you want to allow more houses to be built and more trees to be cut down. So I would ask that you have some integrity in your planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Just bear in mind, we do take comment on individual agenda items as long as they are germane to those topics, okay? Anyone else on anything else? Okay. I would prefer that you wait until that time comes. Okay. Anybody else? Very good. We're going to move on to item F, new business. Item F1 is the extension of the purchase agreement for the surplus DPW properties. Mr. Leo Gonzalez is here representing the applicant, Phoenix Management Holdings. For the new members of the board, this is not a new item. For the rest of us, the original contract purchase agreement was approved by the board on December 17th, 2018. Has been extended several times since then, both relating to either due diligence items or COVID-related slowdowns at the county level and other areas. So attached is a letter from the developer. He's also providing a $10,000 non-refundable good faith advance to the township. If this project does go forward, it would allow us to sell the 2 parcels surrounding the DPW yard for $425,000. And I will leave it up to Mr. Gonzalez.
Members of the Board of Trustees, thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. I have a site plan that I can pass out, if I may. I've also sent, can I approach and?
Yeah, just hand it through, Laura. So, okay.
So as was mentioned, this transaction was originally approved in fourth quarter of 18. We signed the purchase agreement in the middle part of 2019. At that time, we took to the task of assessing the various impacts of this site with the current building that's there and how we developed the 2 parcels in conjunction with the current DPW building to remain, and that the other 2 parcels to be developed. From the best I can kind of go back and look in history, this DPW building was basically placed in the middle of a 13-acre parcel. Probably was not intended to have any additional development on either side. And it was built back in the 90s. Back in the 18, we started looking at this parcel. It went to an RFP. We bid on the property, and with the idea in mind that we felt we could take the I'll call it the east and west parcels and build something that's meaningful on those parcels in conjunction with the existing DPW building that was there. Having said that, it also encompassed a lot of additional due diligence to assess the current utilities are there, to assess the stormwater that's there, and how do we work within the confines of those utilities, and how do we create these 2 parcels that have that can support buildings that can be occupied. We put together the plans in the third and fourth quarter of 2019. I think we're just about ready we were comfortable enough with what we knew about the property to start getting the plans into the county. We didn't want to go there unprepared, and there was a bit of stopping and starting in that we wanted to secure access to or have at least an alternative of securing another access to Port Street through a piece that's owned by the county. We did negotiate that with the county. It's a irregular piece. We think it was a right-of-way piece that probably never got built on clearly. And and that took a lengthy period of time in order to get the county to respond to it. We submitted plans to the county and started getting some feedback. Well, we didn't get much feedback at all initially. And then in July well, because actually the original plan that was submitted was July of 2019 to the county. Because we wanted to get their feedback on stormwater. Hey, here's what we're planning to do. It's kind of unique. We got an existing stormwater system that's going to remain on the property, but we want to do a new stormwater system that will accommodate the new buildings that are being built. Got a minimal amount of feedback, but enough that we could go ahead and do the planning. We finished the plans up and submitted them in March of this past year, only to, well, we submitted them last July and got a little bit of response, and then formally submitted these plans in March of this year to get no response at all. And this has been going on for ever since until just recently. We finally got some feedback on our stormwater. Basically, the direction from the county was the way that you're planning your stormwater is correct. We'd like you to proceed on this course, submit full set of drawings, and we'll review them. Took a long time to get to that point. Took a lot of pushing to get some response from them. Because what we didn't want to do is go down the road and design a system that was going to be contrary to what they wanted to see on their plans. I get a call from Hickman, who's the director of DPW yesterday, voicemail saying, please submit the plans. I'd already tasked my engineers to update the plans anyways about 6 weeks ago, hoping that we were going to get some response so that there would not be a long delay time from the time that we get the response from Wayne County to being able to resubmit again. So now we're going to take that next step if we can get your approval on this extension.
Has your stormwater plan been submitted now to one of the engineering firms that's working for Wayne County?
They have not forwarded on to him. Hickman actually did the review on this himself. And that's fine, as long as it's somebody within the county. I do anticipate, well, coupled with this, as some of the members may know, Wayne County now has gone to a third-party consultant to do the review.
Two consultants. I'm OHM and Wade Trim, as far as I know.
So this will be subject to their review, and that's fine. Listen, if they can bring more people on board to process these in a shorter period of time, I know I'm not the only project that's being delayed. I think there's a lot of projects. Listen, it's just not Plymouth Township, it's multiple communities around Detroit metro area in the Wayne County system.
Mr. Gonzalez, what do you expect the time frame to be then for the review?
So I think now that it's on track and that we have these two-party independent groups that are going to be doing a review, I think we're going to get some feedback from them. From the time we submit, I'm hoping we get feedback within 6 weeks.
Thank you.
So I anticipate that we'll submit our drawings to them, if you grant this approval, within less than 3 weeks. We'll pay our fees, we'll start the process. One of the third parties will review it. We will then, concurrent with that, we'll submit a full set of drawings to the township and the township engineer as well.
The reason why I ask, Mr. Gonzalez, is because you've asked for this contract amendment to extend to December 31st, 2021. Are you confident that that is going to be a sufficient amount of time?
Well, it's a good point, but I think at that time, even if we haven't secured all our approvals, we're comfortable to go ahead and close on the property. We'll have at least had a review back from the county. It's my goal between now and the end of the year that we'll have come before the planning commission and we'll have come before the board, if not for a first review, and maybe it'll be a second review thereafter. But we'll be comfortable enough. We certainly have a lot to do with the attorney's office, and that we got to create easements on the drives. We have to create an easement to your cell tower that the township is going to retain. And depending upon what the county says on the utilities, we may have to go back in. If we have to change one or two of the utilities, we might have to create some new easements. Those will be all done on our expense by our engineers, but will have to be done, and we'll provide those. So we're getting the feedback that I did from Wayne County here in the last day is a big step.
And we're working with the county to fast track all county permit projects in the township. I communicate with the CEO's office every other week, and they've been pretty good since they've started farming the work out to these independent engineering firms. So it's not just you, I mean, it's Amazon, it's Henry Ford, it's a lot of other projects in the township right now that we've been able to push through, but we need to know what we're talking about, and we need to be able to explain it to them so that they can flag it and get it moving.
That has been helpful. Clearly, I think having that, them knowing that, you know, these projects are important and they all get moved along. And I know I'm one of 4 or 5 projects in the township, and I'm probably one of, I would estimate, 100 projects in Wayne County.
Right.
The department, Wayne County, you know, with COVID, certainly threw it into a different realm because there was probably less people working, and there was, the projects were still coming in, you know, people were out there hoping that things were gonna get better. So, I think.
Well, I think
turned the corner.
I think we in Plymouth Township were ahead of the game because we did not close down. We still had people working all the time. Building department was still open. You know, I think we were able to capitalize on the end of COVID, and we were ready to roll on a lot of projects, and I think most communities weren't. So.
Put forth a proposal to offer the township $10,000 non-refundable money. And with the goal that you will extend the 6 months on the contract, that you would consider extending the 6 months on the contract, and that we can begin and finish, I should say, we can finish what we started on this. You know, maybe it's overstated, but it is a reality. This COVID has really had a setback on projects at county levels all around. It's not just Wayne County. I've got 5 projects in Oakland County right now are going through extreme delays. I've got 2 projects in Genesee County that are going through delays. So, you know, I don't want to single out Wayne County. This was a pressure on all of the markets, I think. It was a complicated project to start with. I think because of the fact that the uniqueness of the building being built where it was, and it's worth repeating. So I'm trying to take something that probably was not intended to be done, and I'm trying to monetize it for the township so that you guys can better well spend this money into some other projects going forward. In addition, I'm trying to create some industrial space here that I think is well needed. I have a lot of industrial space in the city of Plymouth. It's been very successful with it, and I'm looking forward to building this project and having it be a successful project for the community as well.
Okay. Any other questions from the
I
board?
have a couple. Is this the first earnest money that you've put forward in 3 years?
I put up earnest money deposit was refundable from day one. But this is the first non-refundable check that I wrote.
All right. When you were here last time, I recommended that you, for your benefit and ours, that you prepare a list of what the open issues are, or you might call it a punch list or something, so that we could see the status of the project. And do you have any lists like that you can share with us? Maybe for the future, if you need another extension. And then the final question is,
Go ahead, you can do that.
has the price, in 3 years, has the price of the land changed?
No, that's a good question.
So are we doing the right thing?
In other words, if we put it out for bid again, would we draw better?
Or would you draw lower? I don't know. I'm not in that business.
Good question.
I think that the uniqueness of the site where you have the township building in the middle of it and they're trying to use space on either side is just unusual enough that you may not attract, and as you realize, we didn't attract originally any other bidders. And so I think just, so here's someone who's trying to make something work that's difficult, might be our best effort, considering the difficulty of the site.
Okay, any other questions? I think you can prepare that punch list. I don't think that's a
Oh,
problem. You should
absolutely.
have that.
Yep. I mean,
You should
these
have
are-
that at hand.
I already have a list with it myself because I've got to track, what's going
Okay,
on. and
so any
certainly
other
we
questions
provide
from
it
the board?
To the.
Any
board
questions from the
members.
public, if any? Sure.
Mr. Supervisor and Board of Trustees, I move that the Township Board approve resolution number 2021-06-22-40, authorizing the Township Supervisor and Clerk to sign the real estate purchase agreement amendment with Phoenix Management Holdings, LLC, for surplus township parcels located at 46555 Port Street. Just a couple of words. Thank you for your credibility and communication.
I second it.
Okay, motion's been made by trustee Stewart, seconded by trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
good luck, keep us posted. If you need any help from the county, let us know.
I will.
Okay. All right, item F2 is acknowledgement of the SMART grant funding for senior transportation. Ginger Moriarty, our finance director, is with us tonight. Ginger, just tell us what this is all about and what do we need to do?
Members of the board. So before you this evening is a request for the board to both recognize and appropriate a grant that was awarded to our Transportation System Fund. Kim Boyce, the individual that runs the Transportation Department, was made aware of this grant. This is through our SMART bus system. We are a subrecipient. This is a CARES Act grant for an amount of $21,360. The grant would be used specifically for COVID-related expenses. A project was put together with the application. The outline was to provide estimated COVID-related expenditures and was submitted with the grant application. The grant application was then reviewed by their board and the award was given to the township. As long as all of the project items that are COVID-related are spent by June 30th of 2023, the transportation can use up to the amount that was awarded. The items that were proposed to in the grant award were for items like a touchless drinking fountain. It included items such as touchless restroom fixtures. Those would be installed at the senior center or the friendship station, as you call it. It would include other personal protective equipment that would be for not only the senior center, but also for the buses that provide transportation. It would include technology that would help her to better schedule for her transportation. It also would include taxi services, as sometimes seniors will request services that are outside of our normal busing service areas that we provide currently. And there are sometimes requests for medical transportation to doctors in areas outside of the parameters that our buses normally travel. And we arrange for services to take the seniors to those locations for medical visits. So an outline was put together. This grant, it works on a reimbursement basis. So we would recognize the revenue that is eligible for the grant in the amount of $21,360. And then as the expenditures are incurred, those invoices would then be submitted to SMART and reimbursed back to the township.
Okay.
So since this is transportation, why is so little being spent on transportation and a lot is being spent on toilets and things like that and faucets?
Because the Friendship Station has been designated a transportation hub. That is where the buses are dispatched.
Okay.
And that is where the buses pick people up and drop them off for various events that go on there. That is also the home of Kim Boyce, who is the coordinator of the transportation system. That's where her office is, her computers, basically our dispatch center. So because it is a transportation hub, we can use federal funding to improve the facility.
I have a question. On this slide here, you know, why are we paying it looks like $29.95 for a box of 50 loop masks? I mean, Walmart has a deep discounted rate now on masks. Why are we paying this?
These are project estimates, which you put this information together based on the supply company that we typically buy masks from. This may have
Okay.
been something that was provided based on where we were buying masks from, that we buy masks from here at the township currently. I think we have several providers that we buy masks from. I know the medical supplies that we buy masks through our custodial services as well. So there's a couple of different vendors that we use. Again, these were project estimates in order to get the grant funding. It doesn't necessarily mean that she has to buy the items specifically from a specific vendor.
Right.
She was coming up with an estimated cost based on needs, and as COVID restrictions change, other things may come up as well.
Right, the alcohol is a bit on the high side as well.
But yeah, the cost for the fixtures, again, were estimates.
okay.
And, you know, the seat covers may change, cost for things that she estimated may need more taxi services and fewer PPE supplies, things of that nature. The cost of the plumbing was an estimate that may come in actually higher, but she estimated the project. So like I said, as we go, those will be eligible costs. It will be on a reimbursable basis, but not to exceed the $21,360.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Anyone in the public? All right, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk?
I move to approve Resolution 2021-06-22-41 to recognize the CARES Act grant by authorizing the Plymouth Township Transportation System Fund to purchase COVID-19 related capital outlay, personal protection equipment, taxi services, in addition to technology services and equipment in the amount not to exceed $21,360 of the grant awarded and to authorize the finance director to both recognize and appropriate $21,360 to amend the Transportation Systems Fund fiscal year 2021 budget.
Motion has been made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yeah.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next is item F3, purchase of speed trailers for the police department.
Good evening. What we'd like to purchase are the trailers that you see on the side of the road when you're driving by and it shoots up your speed. One of the most common complaints we get in the township from our residents are traffic issues. And we currently have one traffic trailer. It's nearly 20 years old. We had it painted at Blackwell a few years ago. It's rusted, and it's no longer the state of the art that it was when we purchased it. These two trailers give us the ability, when a resident calls in and says, you know, there's speeders up and down our street, we can put it out there and actually and get the data to determine whether or not there is really a speed problem out there. We're asking to purchase two of these speed trailers. Lieutenant Kuchik can give you the details of what it is that we're going to purchase, but we will be purchasing, if you approve it, out of the drug forfeiture fund, so we'll have no impact on the general fund budget.
Okay, any questions from the board? Anyone in the public? I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve Resolution 2021-06-22-42, authorizing the Plymouth Township Police Department to purchase two Stalker SAM radar trailers for an amount not to exceed $15,800 from the Federal Forfeiture Fund's capital outlay account, and to authorize the finance director to appropriate budget in the amount of $15,800 to the Federal Drug Forfeiture Fund for the purchases.
Motion's made by Trustee Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clerk Vorva. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yeah.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. That was easy. Okay. Item F4 is a public hearing that is required concerning two amendments to the MITC Brownfield Plan. Mr. Clerk, you will have to take the roll on this.
Okay, the public hearing opening at
7:29.
7:29, moved by myself, Borba. I need a second sponsor.
Support.
Support by
Kermey.
Heisey, Kermey, okay.
Kermey.
Thank you very much. And I need to do a roll call.
Yep.
Supervisor Stewart,
Oh,
Yes.
Gave him a promotion.
I mean trustee Stewart, thank you very much. Do you accept?
Do you want?
Yes, I accept.
Give me that hammer.
No, oh, no, you don't.
Trustee Monahan,
Yes. Oh,
Clerk-
here, I'm sorry.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Kermey.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
And Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so we are now in a public hearing regarding 2 amendments to the MITC Brownfield Plan. I will just borrow off of the item F5. This is a very long saga. As many of you know, we back in September 11th of 2018, we approved a brownfield plan for Site 3, which is the southeast corner of 5 Mile and Ridge. That site was still owned by the State Land Bank. On March 2nd of this year, we amended that plan and transferred it to the MITC for management. This protected the property's eligibility for reimbursement of the costs of non-environmental activities, which is a significant component of financial viability for future development at the property. In April, the MITC Authority Board approved that updated site plan for site number 3, which was now renamed Parcel 13, and formally voted to separate that parcel and other similarly situated parcels included in the amended Parcel 13 Brownfield Plan and created a new base Brownfield Plan, which is now known as Amendment 2. So, tonight, we are looking for 2 motions. One, to adopt the resolution approving the Brownfield Plan amendment for MITC Parcel 13, which will then be connected to the other adjacent and contiguous contaminated parcels along 5 Mile. And then motion number 2 will be to adopt the MITC base Brownfield Plan Amendment 2, which will encompass those parcels along with the other sites along the MITC corridor. Absolutely, if you're taking notes, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But it is, this is basically a ministerial function at this point. The necessary changes and amendments have been made by the MITC board, but as we have been told from day one, we have to, both townships have to approve the amendments along with the MITC authority. I believe Northfield Township approved these amendments at their meeting last week. So I'd encourage your support. But this is still a public hearing, so if there's any questions from the public, we'll entertain those at this time. Okay, hearing none, I would like a motion to close the public hearing.
At 7:32, Mr. Supervisor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The public hearing is closed at 7:32. Item F5 is the MITC Brownfield amendments that I have just described. If there's any comments or questions from the board, I'll entertain them at this time.
May I offer a motion seriatim?
You can motion seriously or not seriously?
Seriatim.
And one after the other.
Latin.
In Latin.
Oh, yeah.
C-R-I-T-I-M.
Went to Catholic Central, didn't you?
Yeah.
I move that the Plymouth Township Board of Trustees adopt Resolution 2021-06-22-43, approving the Brownfield Plan Amendment for MITC Parcel 13 at the southeast corner of 5 Mile Road and Ridge Road and adjacent parcels 11/12 southwest corner of 5 Mile Road and Ridge Road. 14, Ridge Road south of parcel 13 and 15, 5 Mile Road east of parcel 13, as depicted in Figure 1 in the Brownfield Plan Amendment. That is proposed motion number 1. Proposed motion number 2, I move that the Plymouth Township Board of Trustees adopt resolution number 2021-06-22-44, approving the MITC Base Brownfield Plan Amendment Number 2 for all approximately 800 acres of property in the MITC redevelopment area along the 5-mile road corridor between Beck Road and Napier Road, as depicted in Figure 1 in the Brownfield Plan Amendment.
We have two motions on the table. We're going to vote on them in seriatim.
I second them.
And yes, so the motion's been made by Trustee Stewart, seconded by Clerk Vorba. So, Mr. Clerk, this is for both items,
For
correct?
both, correct, in seriatim, so it's both.
Oh, very good.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes,
Motion carries for both.
for both. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Supervisor,
sir.
please allow me one positive compliment about yourself.
I'll take what I can get.
MIT, well, and as you know, I'm willing to criticize in private. Chairman of Appropriations Committee, Representative Al Pasholka of the state legislature, the whole state budget, which is now over $60 billion annually, told me on the telephone, your representative, now supervisor, is not getting enough credit. He's not giving enough credit for pursuing the money for the brownfield development that we're referring to here, and I encourage all of you to drive by and look at it. He said, put it on record. Former State Representative Kurt Heisey pursued money for this brownfield development like a dog on a bone for the people of the Plymouth Township. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
All compliments graciously accepted.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, then, we're going to move on to item F6. This is the request to consider a conditional rezoning for the Plymouth Ridge subdivision. This is the parcel south of North Ridge. A map amendment to the zoning map, and we have Township Planner Laura Haw, who will be advising us, but we'll have Laura, do you want to go first? I think we all know why we're here, so.
You want to go, Laura?
Why don't you want to go first and just
Sure.
give us some background?
Yes, thank you. Evening, trustees. I did put together just a couple slides that I thought might help the discussion tonight. So the next slide shows the subject property. 27 acres, the red dot there represents. It is zoned the R1H, single-family residential. And as you can see, it is surrounded by other residential districts, the different colors and shades of yellow and orange. The next slide shows the existing zoning, the R1E, single-family district, and the proposed, the R1H, single-family. The snapshot underneath is taken from the zoning ordinance, and this is to show.
Sorry, Laura, trying to get the full screen here.
Okay.
No, it won't scroll on me.
50%
won't change to.
Yeah.
Well, if you could just go to the top bar.
What do you want to, yeah, it's scrolling down to the next one. Here we go. Oh,
At the very top of the page.
top of the page?
Yep.
Oh, okay, got it.
Well,
Sorry about that.
no, I'm sorry. If you can go all the way to the top, like not the PowerPoint itself, but where it says BOT presentation 2.
Yeah,
Yep. And then if you can go to File, View. Sorry, 2 tabs over, View. And then page, yeah. The full screen mode is. Okay.
there we go.
Okay. Thank you.
Little challenge today.
Thank you for your patience. So that's the subject site. On the next slide, it shows a snip from the zoning ordinance today. This is Article 6. And this shows that regardless of the R1E or the R1H designation, the uses in the single-family district remain the same. What is different between the two zoning districts on the next page shows the dimensional standards. You can see the R1E row is highlighted in yellow, and the R1H, the proposed district, is highlighted in blue. Now, there are some standards that remain the same between these two districts. So the building height remains the same, The lot coverage remains the same. The rear yard setback of 50 feet remains the same. What is different is the minimum lot area. In the R1E, the current zoning, it's an acre, and in the proposed, it's half an acre. The lot width, the frontage, is also reduced between the two districts from 150 feet to 120. The front yard setback is also reduced from 45 feet to 35 feet, and the side yard setback total is reduced from 30 to 20 feet. And these dimensional differences are important because the next slide shows how they relate to the potential density of the subject site. So this chart here, the first row, shows that in the R1E district today, under conventional zoning, a traditional subdivision, 17 homes are possible. With a cluster housing option and existing zoning, 23 homes are possible. If the parcel was rezoned to the R1H district, 28 homes are possible under traditional zoning. 46 are possible with a cluster housing option, and the applicant for this request has proposed 42. The next slide shows the future land use map. Also, the red dot signifies the property. It is planned as residential, low density. Surrounding areas are also residential. The next slide talks a little bit about the timeline of where this process began. Earlier this year, on March 29th, the developer had an outreach meeting. The Planning Commission on April 21st then held a public hearing. The minutes of that public hearing and meeting are enclosed for the board's reference. At that meeting, the Planning Commission tabled the item and requested a traffic impact study and parallel plans. On June 2nd, the developer had a second outreach meeting at Township Hall. On June 16th, the Planning Commission again considered the application and recommended to deny the rezoning request to the board. And then, of course, tonight, June 22nd, we are here deliberating this agenda item. And as a recommendation, the Board of Trustees has the final authority on a rezoning. The next slide dives into a little bit about the difference between a cluster housing option and a planned unit development and why this project is proposed as a cluster housing option. So the planned unit development encompasses the mostly commercial, office, industrial, mixed-use districts. So those are all the different zoning districts that are allowed for a PUD. And on the right, that listing are all the zoning districts that are allowed for a cluster housing or residential unit development, an RUD. And those are single family with the provision of two family in the cluster housing only. So on the following page or slide, you can see the 7 PUDs in the township that currently exist. And then the second 2 columns list the cluster housing developments and residential unit developments. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is 30 or so developments that have been going on since the 80s that the township has used for residential development. That is just a little bit of background about the application. As I noted on packet page 203, as a conditional rezoning, the Board of Trustees may either approve or deny the application or refer the amendment back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. Enclosed are 2 resolutions for the board's consideration should you wish to take final action on the application request. One resolution is for denial as recommended by the Planning Commission, and the second resolution is for approval. Thank you.
Quick question, Laura, on this slide right here.
Yes.
How is that math calculated? Is that just based on total acreage, or is it buildable acreage?
It's based on gross acreage, and then for the cluster housing, there's a density multiplier.
Yeah, okay. So as a practical reality, the number might be lower if there's some of that acreage, some of that land is not buildable because, say, there's wetlands on it, as an example.
That could be a possibility. The number 20, the 23, or I'm sorry, the 40, the 48 and the 17 and the 28 number of homes comes from the parallel plan that the applicant provided. So they've laid out with the infrastructure and stormwater how many units. So those are pretty
Laura?
correct.
If the board were to approve a rezoning to the R1H, how do we get to if we want 28 and not 42 homes, do we have any rights to ask for that once that zoning has taken effect?
Well, the applicant would be legally able to develop 28 homes under conventional zoning. If they applied for the cluster housing option, and that was recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by this body, then they could go up to 46. So there is, somewhat control in the next step of the process if this were to move forward. However, there is the possibility of up to 46. The applicant has stated in the letter to the township that the maximum number of lots they would permit is 42.
Laura, can you go back to that other chart that showed the number of cluster housing option projects approved by the township?
I think it's the last slide.
Okay. As I look over at the PUD column, I'm seeing the ravines of Plymouth. That I know is a residential unit. What would make that, why is that unique as a PUD?
That site is actually zoned the C2 General Commercial District. It doesn't have an underlying residential zoning.
That's on
Where's that
Northville
again?
Road? Is that Northville Road?
That's the one on Plymouth Road, just kind of on the north side, west of Haggerty. As you go into downtown Plymouth, and Starkweather Lofts would be on your right.
Oh,
So
okay.
borders the old parking lot of Burroughs.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, any other, and the vote in the Planning Commission last week was 6-1 to deny?
Recommendation to deny.
Okay.
Correct.
So legally, we can either, you've given us two resolutions tonight. One would be to approve
The conditional rezoning.
the conditional
and
rezoning.
Second would be
Would
to
be to
deny
just
that.
deny. Okay, so we're not, from a procedural standpoint, we're not affirming the decision of the Planning Commission. Is that a fair statement? We're not,
In the denial.
we're not agreeing to deny, is my point. A yes does not equal a no. These are fresh resolutions.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Laura by the board? All righty then, we have a representative of the applicant. This is Mr. John Pastor. I understand that the developer is also here tonight. That would be Mr. Leo Sauve, but Mr. Pastor is his representative.
Out of a ton of respect, I would like to acknowledge our chair of the Planning Commission, whom I've known for more than 35 years, Mr. Dennis Sobolski. And that vote was 6-0. I'm shocked that people don't know, have not met each other here tonight. Dennis, would you please kindly raise your hand? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pastor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to present this case and application to you. Also here with us is Jim Clean from the Northridge Church and also a representative for the charter school. I guess Laura Boy took a lot of wind out of my sail of what we were going to say, but I'll kind of re-go over if we do the existing zoning, which would be approximately 17 lots. Part of the issue is, or let me start over. When we actually proposed to do this residential property, we were strictly inclined to tell us, or to give us our best deal forward. So when Laura was going through the numbers and all that stuff, I thought that we were able to do 50-some lots. We didn't want to do 50-some lots because I didn't think it was, those more than what I think the site could actually handle. We came up with a site plan of 42. How did we come up with 42? It was a lot had to do with a 35-foot buffer that we were going to put in the site plan that the new residents, that would be more like a natural feature, that we couldn't take down any natural trees and all that. We also, in that site plan, created a lot of open space. In that open space, the existing trees stay there as well. So we thought that that was an important feature of the plan and the site development of ours. We also talked about only limiting it to 42 lots. We have since then, through the meetings and stuff and talking with the neighbors, some of them do have some water problems in the back of their yards. We would, in this proposal, since it is a rezoning, you folks have the power to hold us accountable to make sure what we say we're gonna do is that we actually have to do it. So taking care of the stormwater in the back of the lots that right now are that's sitting there, stagnant water and all that.
The back of the current residence
The
lots?
back of the current residence lot, there's 2, 3, 4 of them, from my understanding, that actually retain water in the back of their lots.
Okay.
So instead of putting a storm system around the perimeter of our property, we would do it within inside the 35 feet and only jog into those areas that actually need to be taken care of so that we're not hitting the amount of trees or growth in those areas. We also said that we would work with the neighbors with planting trees when there's a, for lack of a better word, hole in the screening. So if there's a, that wall is a tree, the window's not, we'd plant a tree where that wall is, and we would work with the neighbors to see what kind of tree that they would want, as opposed to us just picking it out. So in that thing, or in that motion, that then takes care of a lot of the existing trees that a lot of people are actually worried about. If we do the existing plan of the 17, we don't have to do any of that. The existing residents, or the new residents, I should say, could clear cut everything. We wouldn't have to take care of the water problems in the other neighborhoods. We just have to make sure that our water doesn't go on to them. We don't have to create any open space.
Why are you switching gears, though? What are you talking about now?
Well, I'm sorry. I said if we were to go with what the zoning is right now.
Oh, okay.
All right, so just kind of comparing some of the, what we can do and what powers that you guys have over us. If we do the current zoning, there's really limited power that you have over us.
Well, wouldn't that happen through the site plan process
Yes.
anyway? Mm-hmm. Let's just pretend if we approve this tonight, that's not the end. You still have to go back and get your.
For sure.
You have to get your site plan approved, you have to get your stormwater approved, you have to get, does he have to come back here again?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to give.
And you have to come back
synopsis.
here with the final plan approval, is that right?
Yeah, but
Even though
that's,
so-
at that point, the horse is out of the barn. The assumption with this project is they're gonna get 42 in a cluster housing option. He said his own words are that the project's not viable otherwise. Those are your words.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just a clarification, normally, the board does not approve the final plan for a conventional project, right, Laura?
For a cluster housing,
No, for a standard
For
or,
a standard project,
for a site plan, typical, that just goes to the planning commission.
right.
okay. But cluster housing triggers the township board review.
Correct.
That's the trigger, cluster housing.
Okay. All right, sorry,
All right.
John.
Sorry, so, let me hopefully recap is, I guess what I'm trying to, talk to you, not only the residents, and this is what I've talked to people here on the board and the residents, is the township has a lot more control over when we rezone the property as opposed to the way it is, or, God forbid, if the school goes in there. If the school goes in, you're talking, we have no control over the height, the look. We have no control over the parking lights, football fields, soccer fields, what hours they have, and we're still not collecting any revenue. And on top of it, we still have to deal with all the traffic for the police, fire, and all that stuff, so we're not getting any revenue. With ours, with the 42 houses, the revenue approximately a year would be around $150,000 to $200,000 to the township. And that's based on an average of 700 to $1 million homes.
You would collect that.
Can you walk me through that math?
Yep, I got this actually from you, the mill was about 5.1689 mils. If you do the SEV of a $600,000 house, it's really 300,000. You times that by that, it comes up to about 1,550 a home. And then there was 42 home, I did the average of 600 to $1 million home, average that out and times it by 42.
So $1,500 a house.
Approximately, yeah. And that would probably be an average of about an $800,000 house, because the houses are between 6 and $1 million.
So that's nowhere close to $200,000.
Unless my calculator did it wrong.
So 1,500 times 42, is that it? Is that the math?
1,500 times 42.
No, I'm sorry. I came up with 3,360 per house.
63,000.
Now I'm totally confused. What is the number?
I'm sorry.
1,500 times 42.
No.
Let's just get the millage right.
That was,
5.2 times
I'm sorry,
what?
the average of the two, the 1,500 was a $600,000 house. The 5,000 was for $1 million, so I averaged it, and the average of those would be 3,360. If you times that by 42, would be 141.
Well, I think your math of 1,600 per house, I think is correct. 5.2 mils times 300, which is half of 600,000.
Right.
So let's say $1,600 times 42?
That's the low one.
$67,200.
Yeah, okay, so it's nowhere near. You're Mark.
I did, Trustee Kermit, I did the average of $1 million. I did $1 million, which would have been 5,168. I merged those two together, I added them together, divided by 2, came up with approximately 3,360 per home, and then I times it by the 42. Again, it's an average, approximate number, what the number I got from the township. But again, it's actual revenue right now that you're not getting, because right now it's owned by the church, you get $0 from the church. If it goes to become a charter school, you get $0 from the charter schools and you have no control. At least this, you have, control over our site development, what our open space is. We're willing to extend the 35-foot to 50-foot.
Against the existing homes in Plymouth
Yes.
Commons?
That they wouldn't call it a buffer, natural area. But I still would like it that the neighbors can at least go in there, trim, clean if it's dead or bad brush or something like that. But the goal would be not to eliminate any of the existing mature trees.
Laura, most of the trees in there appear to be scrub and cottonwood. Is that the case?
We do have a tree survey from when this project was presented several years ago. At that time, I would say about half the trees are cottonwood, tree of heaven, box elder, black walnut, black cherry, and they are scattered throughout the property. So it's a mix.
Are there any trees with a diameter of more than 18 inches?
There might
I
be a
haven't
few.
looked that closely at it.
I'm sure there are a couple.
The cottonwoods for sure.
And again,
We don't like the cottonwood.
and again, those are some of the things that I would like to leave open that we were able to get there, because I don't believe anybody in this room, whether they are for or against this project, want cottonwoods around. I could be wrong.
No, we do not want cottonwoods planted, and we've actually, like in Country Club Village, we have a map of all the cottonwoods so that when they die or create trouble, that we will take them down.
Right.
Mr. Pastor, what's your role in this project?
My role, just so that everybody understands, is I'm just representing the builder/developer. I have no interest, no financial interest. I'm doing Mr. Sauvé a favor by presenting the issue tonight and before the planning commission, all that stuff. I know it's hard to believe, but I have no financial or any interest in this.
Mr.
Go ahead, Laura, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you go.
Thank you. Mr. Pastor, first of all, thank you for calling me. I was out of town, so I apologize for not returning the call. If the board were to approve the rezoning, is it your position that unless it's done at 42 homes, that you're not going to go forward with the project? Is that what I heard earlier?
The 42 is the number, I could go to 40 I think is what I have permission to do. 42 is what he needs to really make it, but he could live with the 40, but I don't know that really makes a difference.
No, I mean, I was thinking more on the, of 28 to
Right, and
decrease the density.
Right. And if that, in all fairness, and again, I'm not trying to be mean or, disrespectful, it just wouldn't be a viable deal.
But,
Thank you.
sorry, were you finished?
I'm finished, thank you.
But since the purchase of the property is a conditional purchase order, isn't it? Isn't it conditioned on the rezoning?
It is.
So, but what
Absolutely.
happens if it gets rezoned and you do not get approval for the cluster housing option?
Then we wouldn't close on the deal.
So you would not close on the property until after you had approval on the cluster housing option?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I
you
did
have
not know
also
that.
agreed to submit a letter that if everything falls apart, that you're not going to put a charter school there. If, for example, if you get the rezoning but not the cluster housing, you're not going to suddenly put a charter school there. Am I misreading that? How does that work?
What I had said is if we get the zoning and the cluster zoning in the 42, that we would write a letter stating that we would not, if the economy goes bad, or for any other reason, that we wouldn't we wouldn't sell or put a charter school, high school, college, whatever wording that the attorneys come up with.
All right. Don't knock the attorneys, because we're all lawyers up here, with a couple exceptions, so. All right, so let's deal with the elephant in the room, and that's the charter school. Why did this come at the last minute at the planning commission level?
It's my understanding that they found out that this was on the agenda and on stuff. They contacted Mr. Sauve and offered, if they didn't get the zoning, that they would actually put in an offer to buy the property and put the school in. And the representative's here today, but he does have an NDA, so there's only limited amount of information.
There's a non-disclosure agreement.
But they could have done that any time in the last decade.
They sure could. But I believe that they've had that the school has done other work with Mr. Sauve, and I think that might be the difference. And as you know.
NHA.
I'm sorry?
NHA.
You could, yeah.
National Heritage Academy.
Right, yes, National Heritage, and
So
it's my.
what's the national, so did Mr. Sauve build the Plymouth Scholars on North Territorial?
I don't think he built it, I think it was,
He was involved in the transaction.
yes.
Okay, that's all,
Yeah,
okay.
He did?
He did not build it, but he was involved in the transaction.
right. Mr. Sauve is a home builder, he's not.
Yep, got it, now I understand.
And it did result in some neighborhood friction of the way the houses were laid out in the back, on the north side.
From
Absolutely.
my understanding, yes.
Pardon?
It's an ugly sight.
Okay, okay, any other questions for Mr. Pastor?
So when would we have to come back, or when would you bring back the request, this maybe is Laura's question, for cluster housing if the rezoning was approved tonight?
If the rezoning was approved, it would be published and go into effect, next week. It would depend on when the applicant would submit for a cluster housing. We would wait until they filed application.
Well, he's missed this construction season, right?
Well, no.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, if I may, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's why it's important that way we need a decision tonight if, either yay or nay, because the construction season is coming to a close, and that's the reason why we would be looking for either approval or denying so that we know what we're gonna do. Understand, Mr. Sauve is a home builder. He wants to build homes.
But he would have to come back here for the cluster housing approval sometime, Laura, before September 1st, October 1st?
For construction this
Yeah.
year? Yes.
So you would want them on like a July agenda?
Well, right now they've missed the July public hearing agenda.
Okay, so in August.
July's next week.
I'm just trying to, plot my agendas here.
I want to make sure I understand the conditions of this sale. So currently, help me out if I got this correct or not. There's a conditional sales agreement between Northridge and the firm you're representing. And it's conditional upon A, this being rezoned, and B, the cluster housing option being approved.
I believe that it's based upon getting rezoned.
Just rezoning?
I am not privy to the actual thing, but part of what he would do, the rezoning, is also the cluster housing option of it. So it'd be the approval of that. So I don't know if it exactly says that, but that's what he would need to move forward to close on it.
So your preference, if the zoning was not approved and the cluster housing option was not approved, you would not purchase this property?
I don't know, because then they have the charter school here that would be making
So
an
that
offer
was,
to Mr.
that was getting
Sobey.
to my point, is
Yes.
you would buy it and flip it
It's a possibility, yes.
instead of Northridge doing what they want to do with the property.
Yes, I can't speak for Northridge, but yes.
Let me ask you
We have-
this,
we have a-
would
we
you
have a
walk
letter-
away?
Hold on.
Would you walk away from the deal then? If you didn't get your zoning here tonight, and you seem to be opposed to this charter school yourself, would you walk away from the deal of purchasing that property? Or are you saying to this board, if we don't approve what your request is tonight, then you're going to go on and move on with this charter school as a purchaser?
Those are the options I have. I don't know what other options I have.
Okay, it was really, I'm sorry, I don't mean to belay the point, but those are the only two options you're considering then. So the third option would be for you not to purchase the property, but you are.
That's also, that surely is an option as
Okay.
well, yes. And the charter school can go right to Northridge and buy it from them direct.
But there is money to be made if you were to purchase the property and sell it to the school.
Offer, yes.
But
Okay,
To
Jerry,
that-
Jerry has something.
Yeah,
go ahead.
well, Northridge, their plan was to put a parking lot in, and they can't do that. I have a letter from them saying, because they couldn't do that, they want to sell the property. And they wanted that put into the record. I also have several other documents here. One from a Cheryl, Rotole, I don't know if I can enunciate that. I don't know if it's Rotel or Rotelli. Asking that this become, her email become part of the record, objecting to the project. I also have a email from Miss Jill Curtis, also submitted, I think, to all the board members, but they wanted it to become part of the record, objecting to the change in zoning.
That's correct.
And then I also have received late in the day here, two notices of intent to file petitions objecting to this resolution by the Plymouth Township Board and the Planning Commission application number. And both of those have been received by this, by the township clerk here. And
Gary,
so-
what are they?
What
It's a
does that
petition?
mean?
Yeah, it's a
Multiple
notice.
signatures?
It's a
No,
notice of
there's no name,
intent.
there's no name on it by
No, there's-
anybody.
There's no name on it, just it says registered elector of Plymouth. And
There's no name on it.
there's no name on it, but it says a notice of intent to file petition objecting to the resolution. And there's two separate ones. And so we have those, they will become part of the record.
So what they're saying is that if the township board votes to approve this, they will seek a petition to put a referendum to overturn the board's decision, which can be done in the law.
In law.
And it was done recently in Solon Township in Leelanau County on May 4th.
That's correct.
Exactly the same situation.
Yes.
Where the planning commission voted to reject the rezoning on M72. The township board voted to approve the rezoning. The residents got a petition to put it on the May 4th ballot, and overturned the rezoning.
And that's what these.
So that's what she's implying?
Well, that's, I don't know who
How you
it
know
is.
it's a
There's
she?
no name.
Oh, I thought you said it was a she.
No, that was two separate
name on
letters,
it.
separate letters. I have two separate emails that I mentioned their names. This has no name on them, but just a registered elector of Plymouth Township saying that they, one is a notice of intent, the other was a courtesy notice of intent to file a petition. So two separate ones. It appears to me that it seems like it came from the same person, but
It's anonymous. Has it been notarized?
no, nothing has been notarized, but it was received by the township clerk late, like around 4:30 today, so.
All right.
I'd like to quickly go back to Audrey's point, because it confused me a little bit, not your point, but the follow-up to it. And can you guys hear me? I don't know if my mic's working. You can hear me? And is that their action, the outcome of tonight's meeting might only be to approve the rezoning, but not to approve the cluster housing option, and their next step is presuming that the cluster housing option is stamped and done and ready to go. I think that's very presumptuous.
Okay.
Keep going.
I'll make my comments in a minute.
Okay. Trustee Stewart, did you have something?
If it's not necessary, then it's necessary not to do it. So I'm a no vote tonight. The communication gap is enormous, massive. I don't have the staff anymore to reply to all of the emails. So I kept repeating my Dutch conservative philosophy. If it's not necessary, then it's necessary not to do it tonight. Where's the fire? The fire chief is right over there if you need his help. Here's the letter, and if Ed or Leo would help me, pass this letter out, please. This is the copy of the letter that Jerry Borber received and put into the record. Now, I spoke for 45 minutes this afternoon with James King, and apparently you dictated a memo to Pearl, his administrative assistant. This is my recollection of truth. Okay, hold on a minute. This is my record. If you want to respond, you can respond.
Mr. Stewart, I'm not going to have you badger people in the audience. If he wants to come up and testify, he can do that. But we're not going, this is not going to.
But I don't want to be interrupted.
You're not going to cross-examine everybody.
But I don't want to be interrupted.
I have not interrupted you at all. You have to follow the protocol. If you want to call somebody forward and have him appear on the record, then you can do that.
When am I allowed to speak?
You're speaking right now, and you're passing out information. So
Clerk Borba entered on the record.
Get on with it, but don't badger people here in the audience.
You're a yes, I'm a no vote.
How do you know that? Get moving.
Because you indicated that to me previously.
I'm confused when you.
This memo was signed and emailed to us by the supervisor. James King indicated to me that he had not heard of any option in regard to a charter school. I think it's an illusory argument. I don't think there's a market for it. I think it's derogatory when you stop and consider the model of excellence of the Northville Public Schools, the Plymouth Christian Academy, and the Plymouth Canton Public Schools. Get them a chance to get back on their feet this September, for heaven's sakes. I don't think there's a market for it. I think the worst fear you may have is Toll Brothers come in and wanting to build something, or another developer. Now, Mr. King told me, it is my testimony, that he was unaware when he signed this in the last 24 hours that there was a 6-1 no vote on the Planning Commission a week ago tonight. Therefore, I'm actually stepping back. Not down, I'm stepping back, and I'm looking forward to the in-depth answer of why. And I'm looking forward to my representative. My representative on this Board of Trustees is Bob Dorshevitz. He has experience with the Planning Commission. And I'd like him to explain the why 6-1 said no 7 days ago. And I see no reason whatsoever to overturn that. Period. The charter school talk is illusory and offensive. And it's offensive to a lot of people at Plymouth Christian Academy and the Plymouth Public Schools District.
Why are you pointing at me?
I'm a supporter. I grew up with a private school in my town of Wyandotte, and I grew up with an excellent Wyandotte Public Schools. And I think we have the same thing here. We also have an excellent private Catholic boys' school, Catholic Central. I don't see any market for a charter school whatsoever. I think it's an illusory threat. And it's just groundless, meritless.
Okay, Mr. Pastor, how would you respond to that? I mean, I guess he's saying that this letter is a fraud.
I, tell you the truth, I'm not sure how to respond. I guess if Mr.
Yeah, I guess.
If the trustee Stewart would have returned the call to me, I could have explained to any questions that he had. I did talk to Jim earlier today, or was it yesterday? It might have been even yesterday. He wrote the letter. I didn't dictate anything. I'm a builder, for crying out loud. I'm not an attorney. I don't dictate letters. I have a hard time writing letters, let alone, trying to, show people or tell people what to do or not do. Now, for him, knowing that it passed or didn't pass at the planning commission, I don't know. I don't know if we discussed that. I don't remember if we discussed that or not.
You were here last Tuesday night for the planning.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
But I'm talking about Jim. I knew that it didn't pass, but Jim, I don't know that it ever came up in the conversation. The reason why I called Jim up is because there was a rumor out there stating that the church didn't care if they sold it or not. So I called him up and said, do you care? And he says, yeah. I said, can you write me a letter? And he did. So that's all the extent of that conversation was.
So is there going to be a charter, if we vote no on this, will there be is a charter school going to go in there, yes or no?
I can't 100% say that. I do know that they have, the representative is here.
They stand up, at least so we know who they are.
Okay. So we have a representative of a charter school.
Yes.
Do you have a purchase contract?
Not yet. They're waiting for a denial. before
Show
they
me
move
a
forward.
purchase agreement, period.
Mr. Dorshevitz, when they came a week ago,
Yeah.
did they mention anything about a charter school or having
Yeah,
any contract?
he did, and he kind of dropped it as a bomb out on the
There's
audience.
a song
It was-
like that.
it
You dropped
was-
a bomb on me.
I thought it was really, I didn't think that was the right way to handle it, because it came across to the audience clearly as, I'm going to hold my breath if you don't do what I say.
Right. That's disingenuous.
It was.
Well, in the April 24th minutes, it said in here on page 4, page 2015 of 218, it says there is no pending charter school activity.
Yeah,
It's in the planning commission minutes
right,
of April 21.
correct. Yep. So
Now
I'd
you're
like
saying there
to,
is charter
If
school
I may
activity.
clarify, at our first meeting that we had, because it was a Zoom meeting, there wasn't a charter school involved at that meeting. It was only approximately, 3 weeks ago that they approached Mr. Sauve. As soon as I found out, which was 2-3 days before our meeting, is when I brought it up. And I brought it up to the board, not as a threat, it's reality. I'm not trying to threaten or anything like that, it's reality.
We'll get in.
There's an option of that to happen.
we understand
But it's
that.
not,
and I-
but it's
you
not
know,
an,
But
but it's not
But
an,
we're so
But
disingenuous all stuff
it was
about it.
kind of the way that it was presented. It was probably not well received by
I
public.
don't
I'd like to maybe make a few comments, because I'd like to share with you my thought processes. So I really struggled with this, probably as much or more than I struggled with any decision that I've had to make in my 17 years on the board. And here were my thought processes. When the project was first proposed back a few months ago, I was supportive of it. I said, what's the big deal? It's 29 houses versus 42, or 23 versus 42. I said, what's the big deal, right? But then I began to try to listen to feedback. And I began to understand that it is a big deal to a lot of people. And in 17 years on the board, I've always said that if you're here long enough, you're going to reverse yourself on a decision. And I have also said that the day that I stopped listening to the constituents was the day that I should retire. And I had a lot of introspection. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And I finally came to the conclusion that there was so much pushback from the public that we should listen to the constituents, the people that put us in office. And the people that put us in office, by and large, are against this project. And I think we should listen to them. And so I'm voting no as a result of that.
So what about hold on, let me turn this on. What if a charter school went in there? What would be the disadvantage of a charter school versus houses? The pros and cons.
So one of the things, one of the reasons that I struggled so much with this decision is I think there's good arguments on both sides. The property owner has a right to develop the property. Developers need to the project needs to be financially viable, and they need a return on their investment. I get all that. The charter school option, I mean, there's pros and cons. You can go down the list. But is it a foregone conclusion? And is the reason, if the public sentiment is against this project, and some people have said, well, it's a small vocal minority, it's the only ones we've heard from. And if there is a majority that approves of this project, I don't think anybody knows that for a fact because nobody's gone and knocked on doors and taken surveys and interviewed the people that are the most impacted stakeholders. So I think those that are most impacted by this project are aware that there's a risk of a school going in there, and they've been aware of that for years. They were aware of that when the previous 72 cluster houses option came through a couple years ago. But it's speculative, we don't know for sure. We have somebody saying, yeah, we're interested in putting a school there, but to go from we're interested in putting a school there to opening the doors of a school, there's a lot of steps in between, starting with acquisition of the property and moving thereon.
Okay, years back, a school was a positive thing in the neighborhood, but now it's a negative thing?
Oh, that's an interesting.
Well, I don't,
I'm trying to understand that.
in my way of viewing this, this is not an option between 42 houses or a charter school. This is an option of whether or not we're going to approve a zoning change. And I think we've heard loud and clear from residents in surrounding neighborhoods. I think we've heard loud and clear from the Planning Commission that we should vote no on that option. Now, will that mean that somewhere down the road, a charter school is an option? Maybe. I'm kind of the same viewpoint as John, that's a fact that was introduced here to muddy the waters, to maybe sway a vote one way or another. But I think at the end of the day, we have to look at what's on the table today, which is, are we going to approve a zoning ordinance? I'm of the belief that we have to listen to the surrounding residents, and we have to listen to the Planning Commission and support their recommendations.
And I echo what you said, Mr. Dorshevitz, and as well as you, Mr. Clinton. I've heard nothing but pushback on this ordinance for the rezoning issue. And we have a fiduciary responsibility, I think, as a board, to listen to those who have elected us. I understand all that goes into planning. I understand that there has to be some sort of financial gain for you in order to make it from a 28 to a 42. I understand also that maybe you were blindsided by a recent event of having perhaps the charter school issue come up. But all the emails that I've gotten and that I've received, not only from Mr. Heisey, but also from members of the public, including in my own subdivision, I'm in Rolling Oaks, have been negative towards this, and we really need to listen to that. I have a real issue with the density of it. I don't like to see cluster housing, per se, in such a small area, which is why I was adamant about asking if perhaps there could be some sort of middle ground to be achieved here. But I didn't hear it. And the people that have sent me emails aren't necessarily opposed to the project. What they're opposed to is the density. I don't know if you're familiar that well with that intersection of Ridge and North Territorial, but we hear accidents all the time over there. So to add even more density into that area, to me, even just as a taxpayer and citizen of this township, is just not the right way to go. I applaud your effort for being here, and I thank you for doing that, but I'm going to listen to the citizens of the township.
Okay, Mr. Pastor, any other comments at this point?
I'll just,
Okay, so let me just say this, and I've prepared some remarks here tonight. First of all, I believe the developers have submitted the best plan possible. To the best of my knowledge, they have complied with most, if not all, of the requirements put forth by our planner and Wayne County. Most importantly, it is my understanding that the lots along the western edge of the site plan are comparable in size to the adjacent existing homes, and the setbacks on those homes appear to be generous. The homes along Ridge and south of Northridge Church are the smaller, denser lots, but for the most part, they will be facing each other and/or the street or the church. The developer is proposing 42 units. Most of these units are going to be of the smaller variety. That's a question, I think, right? That appeal to the empty nesters who we know want to stay in the Plymouth community. That's what we hear from residents as well, people who want to get out of the larger homes and move into the smaller, lower maintenance, more carefree homes. Now, a little background is in order, which maybe not everybody knows. In 2015, I believe, Northridge purchased the property at issue tonight. They developed plans for a parking lot with 2 additional driveways onto Ridge Road. I have those documents. I've reviewed those documents. These, now, when they wanted to put the driveways in and the additional parking, the neighbors to the east objected to that plan. Some of you are here tonight. I met with you. I met with these residents when I was a candidate for supervisor in 2016. In 2017, when I became supervisor, I denied Northridge Church's request to build this parking lot, as I believed it would be in violation of the more than 25-year-old federal consent order between Northridge and Plymouth Township, which limits them to 2 access points on Ridge Road. There is a federal consent order. This was in federal court back in the mid-1990s. That consent order is still valid and can be invoked at any time by either of the parties. I took it upon myself to deny their parking lot request because I felt that Northridge was trying to get 2 more access roads onto Ridge. So let's keep that in mind. A couple years ago, as we know, Grand Sakwa proposed 72 units at the same site, and that opposition, the opposition drove him out of here as well. My second concern is more of a legal nature. As I have outlined, if this latest plan for the site is denied, will Northridge now have a legal argument under the categorical or regulatory taking analysis of the Fifth Amendment? A categorical taking occurs where a regulation denies all economically beneficial or productive use of land. The U.S. Supreme Court has also stated that if regulation goes too far, it will be recognized as a taking. A regulatory taking occurs when a government regulation limits the use of private property to such a degree that it effectively deprives the property owner, which is Northridge, of value. If the current project is rejected, Northridge will have been denied their use of the land 3 times in the last 5 years. Would this be a good basis for litigation? Now, we've heard a lot about property rights lately during the tree ordinance discussion. What property rights does Northridge have to make the highest and best use of their land? Also, and perhaps most importantly, We've been approving cluster housing and rezoning plans for years. Most recently, the Purcell site, Margate, Verona Park, the Woods, and as Laura pointed out tonight, at least 30 of these cluster housing options have been approved by this board over the last 3 decades. The precedent is clearly in Northridge's favor. Just last month, this board approved the Margate project. It was approved on surplus land being sold by a church. How is Margate different than the matter before us? Here's a big difference. They're putting 35 homes in a much denser arrangement, I believe on a much smaller piece of land.
10 acres.
We also have the charter school issue at this site. Over the past few years, this site, the Northridge, what we call the Northridge site, has been mentioned as a charter high school or similar charter academy. I have been hearing this going back to my days in Lansing. I've heard this every year that there's this possibility because of its prime location and because of its proximity to Northridge, there could be some affiliation there down the road. This is not something that I have invented out of nowhere, nor have I ever threatened it despite some emails that I have seen circulating in the neighborhoods. Those emails are deeply inaccurate. As this board has learned firsthand with the Plymouth Scholars Academy, the Ivywood Academy, and New School High, charter schools in Michigan can be built virtually anywhere with little or no government approvals. We have them freestanding, located currently in a church, and even one in an industrial park. The last time I checked, with all due respect to my colleagues, charters in our area are doing very well. And I'm sure a charter school, perhaps affiliated with Northridge, or maybe another religious institution, would be very attractive to parents in the region. I recently visited Ivywood Charter School, which is in an industrial park. They have a waiting list of over 400 students. Again, if it becomes a charter school, we will have very little say in the matter, and the neighbors will have no standing to prevent it. And in fact, our decisions tonight may be forcing Northridge no other choice than to go with a charter school so that they can at least get some return on their purchase of that land. Now, I know anyone can sue anyone, anywhere, anytime, but I think we have a fiduciary duty to make sure Plymouth Township doesn't buy itself a lawsuit, especially where state law in this matter is clear. We may be equally exposed to a federal lawsuit under the existing consent decree or another legal theory under federal law. In the end, I believe this is the best plan possible for the site, one that respects the immediate neighbors, allows Northridge a fair use of their property, and prevents more intrusive alternatives, such as a charter school. It's also the most likely scenario that will not result in litigation. So those are my comments. At this time, Mr. Pastor, if you have anything else or any other board members, I'll open it up to the public. Again, we understand that that you may want to have a few folks come up first, and if we start developing a trend, I'm not gonna tell anybody you can't speak, but we don't need to hear the same argument 18 times. So, maybe okay.
But
So no rule.
also,
So it's not, this is, because, it's not the matter of who has the most people here wins, it's, we're trying to gather information. Okay.
you do have a problem, several possible legal problems. I don't practice law. I did go to law school, and I've been a long-time realtor, and 35 years. When you start alienating people's ability to transfer property, it becomes a serious problem. And so the fact that we've denied them 3 times, kind of 3 strikes you're out, is just a legal problem that we could be buying into. And I just want people to really think about those kinds of issues. Not only taking, but alienating the transfer of property is possibly an issue.
Jerry, I think that we should have our council, brief that issue. I mean, this is something that's brought upon all of us tonight. Some of us didn't have the foresight to think about that. What are the ramifications? Maybe we should be tabling this.
We have a room full of people who have not met each other. Compromise and consensus. Prior to this, Mr. Pastor had his feet in cement for 42. Now I've heard he's at 40. I want to thank, at my invitation, Mr. Suave for coming here tonight. And to Mr. King, I almost made a commitment that I would vote yes for an option that was around 30 or 32 homes. Compromise and consensus. Delicate compromise and consensus. I hope that takes place after this meeting.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor, so we have 3 minutes. Sir, and we're not going to ask for addresses, but we would just, if you could just say that what community you live in. I'm sure you're in Plymouth Township.
My name's Wayne Sloop. I live in Plymouth Commons.
Could you spell your last name? Because we have a hard time.
SCHLOO, P as in Paul.
Thank you.
First name Wayne.
Okay.
Again, I'd like to urge the board to take the Planning Commission's recommendation. I think that's why you have them. And the other thing is, the charter school, it really, whether it's an option or whatever, it really came across as a threat, I think, to a lot of people. And that's my perception. And to me, that's not here nor there as far as what's on the table tonight. And the other thing John was mentioning, where I live, I'm impacted by the drainage. And really, Northridge's parcel that we're talking about, it drains into my property, and I've got a catch basin back there. So what I'm getting at, there's trees there. What you're gonna have to do to fix the drainage on that parcel, you're gonna have to regrade it. So those trees are gonna have to go one way or the other. So we're not being granted any big favor by saving trees there. That's not gonna happen to regrade that. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much. Next.
Everyone, thank you for allowing me this time. My name is Albert Monroe. I'm in Fox Point subdivision. So I'm directly east of this property. Just two quick items then. You brought up the federal consent order ruling, which we've gone through that a number of times. Thank you. The question that popped up in my mind, and I'm not an attorney, right now those two pieces of land, the Northridge, I'll call it proper, and the Chapel property, basically can't be crossed as Northridge has proposed in the past, like you said, with driveways or other exits and things of that nature. If this sale goes through, it's my understanding not only the Chapel property, which is about 24 acres, but there'll be an additional 3 acres from the Northridge main property included in this deal.
I think for stormwater purposes, right, Laura? Stormwater, go ahead.
Yes, the packet should have the parcel map included where it shows the 3 parcels that are being impacted and proposed for the rezoning, and that includes the stormwater on the Northridge Church site itself.
But it's also in the calculation for the number of homes, because it's also going from 24 to 27 acres. So if that does go through, if this sale goes through based upon that information we have today, does that take the federal consent order, make it null and void?
I don't know. I think that my armchair opinion is that if this property is sold to a third party, whether that be a home developer or a school developer, once Northridge has dissociated themselves with that property, the consent agreement stays in place. But remember, my denial was originally based on the fact that they wanted 2 outlets onto Ridge, which would have given them 4. They're only allowed 2, and that was a way for them to get 2 more access roads by building an auxiliary parking lot that they may have not ever used, but it got them what they wanted, which was 2 more driveways onto Ridge. And the residents to the east objected because they were concerned that during peak traffic hours, you would have Northridge parishioners cutting through the neighborhood.
How is this impacted? Because this property was not originally in the
It's
original
not.
scope.
No, it is, this property is not part of the consent decree, but again, my analysis in 2017, which I stand by, was that this was an end run around that. It was a way around it by, let's buy that land to the south, we'll build a parking lot there, and then we'll get 2 more access roads, and we'll be able to get around the 4 corners of the consent agreement.
But in terms of his question, the consent judgment is not really relevant with respect to this parcel because it wasn't part of the scope.
I don't believe that the consent judgment is relevant to this parcel as it's being developed right now, either as a residential or a school development. The point that I made, Bob, is just from a historical standpoint, there's been 3 denials in 5 years. And at what point do we continue to restrict their use of the property?
But they haven't been denied, we have not denied development on that property. The property is still commercially, it's usable. It's just not usable for the purpose that they want to use it for, which would require rezoning.
Is that but there's a highest and best use argument that can be made. And you know, we can debate that all night.
Yeah.
But we're taking away from this gentleman's time. That's okay.
Go for it.
You're out of time now. No, never. No, just no.
Wait, the next 3 are out of time.
No, yeah.
So is to follow up then, I mean, with all due respect, I don't know if we've actually denied them because they withdrew their application prior to that actually being denied, I believe, when they went for the parking lot. 3 years ago?
It was my understanding that back in 2017, I wasn't here when they came. I don't know if they ever formally came to the township with this request. It was first brought to my attention as a candidate for office by your neighbors, and I met with you guys and your neighbors back in 2016, and you know, there was a lot of politics involved at that time. I don't need to get into it. It's over. But when I became supervisor, I shut that down because I knew what they were trying to do. I knew Northridge was trying to get around the consent agreement.
So to wrap this up real quick then, my last thought was then, so based upon the charter school on North Territorial, where the property was purchased by the developer and then was sold to the charter school group, by buying off the additional 3 acres on the main property of Northridge, if that was put together and then sold back to Northridge, does that null and void the consent agreement?
Okay, so now we're talking about the area that was set aside for stormwater. I am gonna.
But included in,
that parcel is part of, that is part of the consent agreement, but I don't know how that benefits. You know, we'd have to take a deeper dive into the consent agreement. I don't know how that benefits Northridge, other than maybe gives them some additional stormwater capacity. But the main question is, does it null and void the consent agreement? I would, again, just winging it right now, I would say no. I don't think it does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna get my timer out here, hold on.
All right. Hi, I'm Craig Gerber, I'm from Plymouth Commons.
I'm sorry, could you spell your last name?
Gerber, Gerber.
Thank you.
Yep. And you maybe already hit on it because with highest and best, I'm not sure, I'm not a lawyer, I don't get it. But with regards to the legal concerns with the property value, it is a bit confusing to me. If you buy a property, perhaps you paid too much based on the zoning that was there. I'd say in my mind, clearly, it's zoned one way and you could develop it, just not at the price of the land that's being asked for. That doesn't mean that, I don't understand why we'd be responsible for ensuring that the person who originally purchased it is covered financially. They overpaid. I mean, I've taken many losses. That's just one confusion to me. And then the other thing is regarding the charter school, the plans were shared with us recently by email to show what the charter school would look like. But it sounded like this was a very recent occurrence, like very recent. Those plans say that they're permit dated of March 8th. So I'm not sure how that date compared to what was said earlier, but it seems like maybe it existed. The other thing that's on that was weird to me is that the way the plan shows, and I wish that could be shared here, it looks that covers the existing chapel. The residential plan maintains the chapel. The school plan that was shared with us looks to be over the chapel property, so I'm not sure if that's going to be another part of the school or what, but I'd be curious to see what the plans are. Does the chapel disappear if the charter school goes in place? And that's really it. Well, last point was he did mention a 50-foot green belt perimeter instead of 35. Of course, that would be preferred if the decision goes in favor of rezoning. I'm opposed, but.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
Everybody, my name's Lee Mira, last name's M-I-E-R-A. Live in Fox Point. And I may have a little bit of perspective, a little bit more like Mr. Heisey. I'll kind of read from my notes here. My wife and I have lived in the Fox Point sub for 5 years, lived in Ridgewood Hills back when Ridge Road was a dirt road. We bought that asking naively, will that ever be paved? The real estate agent said, who can say for real, but it could happen. Or it probably won't because it's going onto a natural
Trail. Natural road, natural trail, yeah.
So in the meantime, we have toddlers. Ridge Road gets paved. It's a highway now. So we end up moving to the city because we really couldn't get around fencing. Anyway, fast forward, now we're living here. So basically, we understand that some of these rezonings in the charter school, it's all depending on what the market conditions are. Business is business. So the market conditions would determine whatever our reality is. After seeing Grand Sacca's proposal for 2 years ago, I was personally thinking that something more in the order of 40 houses would have been a good compromise. When Mr. Sauve came forward with this proposal, I thought it was well thought out, however lacking in great details, but the property lines matching all adjoining neighbors in Plymouth Commons. Higher density would be towards the church property. I thought it was a great compromise. Here's where I'm very naive. I thought approximately $500,000 would come into our city. Apparently we get this much of it. But anyway, I meant to the township, sorry. But anyway, it would help our tax base and high-end homes that, you know, the market's hot right now. Let's lock in on this deal. It would help our property values, in my opinion. So I would like to say that, and in respect to our neighbors in Plymouth Commons, I mean, we walk dogs in each other's neighborhoods. I don't want to have tomatoes thrown at me. I know that it throws you off when you have things that change. We have a great amount of privacy in our yard. We've built, you know, there's some nice landscaping. I know it kind of happened, and I am just totally prefer not to have a charter school there. Only in the respect that, you know, nothing against the schools. I do believe in public schools. I do support them. My kids went to PCA though, and they're in private schools now. But suggestion, I would see cars possibly coming into our areas, waiting to pick up kids. That's the type of stuff. You know, nothing against the charter schools, but I'd much rather see.
Just need you to wrap it up.
The money come into the city's coffers.
Okay.
And I respect your decision either way. You guys know more than I do.
All right, thank you.
That I doubt.
All right.
Good evening, I'm Tim Boyd, BOYD, I live in Fox Point. I'm speaking only on behalf of myself, not my neighbors or any other role I may have with the township. Personally, I'd like to see this land developed. I've wanted to have it developed for a long time. I feel that the longer we wait, the greater the risk we run of some really dense development coming in that we have little or no control over. I'd also, quite frankly, like to see the church get their investment back so they can use that money for other Christian outreach. I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of Mr. Suave and Mr. Pastor to reach out to the community and explain their proposal. And I believe their proposal had some good points to it. But when you reach out to the homeowners, you need to listen to what they say, and you need to be prepared to respond to the concerns that they raised. In this particular case, I feel that the proposal that they brought forward, after hearing all of the feedback from all of the homeowners in the area, the feeling is it's still too dense. Now we're at this situation where we now have this charter school thing thrown in. I want to be very clear to the board and the public, and particularly Mr. Suave and Mr. Pastor. I could not more strongly oppose a charter school going into that piece of land. I believe that many of our neighbors share that view, and I believe that we would do anything legally possible to prevent it from being used in that form. So I want to make that very clear. If you go down the charter school route, you're going to have a ton of opposition from this community. I hope that's very clear. Now, on the other hand, I believe that, as I said earlier, the property should be developed. I believe there's a middle ground. Mr. Stewart, you've mentioned that. I proposed to the board with a note, and I also sent the same words of that proposal to Mr. Pastor to share with Mr. Suave, two different approaches that would have a lower density than 42, but a higher density than you would have just purely from using this R1E in a regular zoning environment. I really ask you all to, presuming the board decides to reject your proposals tonight, if that's the way it goes, I ask you, I beg you, go back, sharpen your pencils, come back with a proposal that is more likely to have support from our Plymouth Commons homeowners, from the Fox Point homeowners who oppose the current proposal, and potentially, possibly from the Planning Commission and the board. That's all I have to say tonight. I just really feel it's important that we develop this land, but develop it in a way that's consistent with the township's master plan and how the areas around the area in question have already been developed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Christine Radze, R-A-D-Z-E. I'm in Plymouth Commons subdivision. So I bought in the township because of the wonderful sprawling lots. And I think most people who live in the township bought for that reason. Cluster housing, in my opinion, does not belong in the township. It belongs in the city. Look at 5 Mile and Beck. I would never buy there. I don't think anyone who lives in Plymouth Commons or Fox Point or Rolling Hills would buy there as well today. So that's one point I wanted to make. Second is, with regards to the zoning, so I don't think anyone is preventing Northridge from selling that property or making money from it. Why do they have to change the zone, right? So can't they make money and develop it with the current zone? Why does it have to change? If you change it to cluster housing, then it opens up how many other parcels of land in the township will become cluster housing, right? Question. I had a third point. Well, let's go with that.
Thank you.
The other point was, so in the Planning Commission, right, so 6 out of the 7, because I was there, voted against, denied it, right? So now you're going to go back and you're going to say, oh, the Planning Commission doesn't really matter. Really? So all that time and effort and all the residents showing up, into the one gentleman's point, he said, he made the point where, where's the majority? Or I'm sorry, I think it was, I think you made that comment. Where's the majority? Where are they? If it's not an issue, where are they? Why is it just us, the residents, who are saying, no, we don't want cluster housing in the township? I mean, at least that parcel. And no one's preventing Northridge from selling that land. Just state, why does the zoning have to change? And this comes up time and time again. I've been to like probably 4 of these just in the last, 3 of these in the last, this year alone. But it's come up previously. So how long do we have to do this, right? I've been a homeowner there in Plymouth Commons for 21 years. Do we have to expect this every year? That it's going to be rezoned? I don't think the residents, well, maybe you do. You at Fox Point, you want a cluster housing,
Okay.
Good
so-
for you.
All right, well, let's stay on point, so.
Yep. So there you go.
Okay, thank you.
You have a great day.
Thank you.
My name's Kathy Metter, Metter. I live in Plymouth Commons subdivision. I had submitted a letter because we were unable to make some of the meetings and it had been read, and I would just like to, I'm talking about the rezoning, so I'd just like to read the letter that I submitted. I would like it to be on the record. We strongly oppose changing a residential zoning regulation so that a developer can make his deal work. We are not against anyone making money, but prefer they follow the existing zoning guidelines. We will be here in the township long after the developer builds his houses and moves on to the next location. Our original letter, I'll finish with that. We are current residents of Plymouth Township for over 20 years. One of the reasons we moved to Plymouth Township, and especially Plymouth Commons subdivision, was based on the residential zoning regulations. We are writing to express our strong opposition to the rezoning of the property that borders our property. While we do enjoy viewing the landscape and the abundant wildlife of the property that borders our property, we do understand that this property can be developed. We feel this property should remain R1E to help preserve the current neighborhood values and atmosphere of this part of the township. We respectfully request that the Board of Trustees deny the zoning request to R1H. We know our opinion is shared by many in our subdivision that will be directly and indirectly affected by our decision. I appreciate your continued service of the township.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
I'd like to make a motion to table this in light of the information and need for legal counsel advice and what Mr. Heisey's comments were. I think we should move to table the motion.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion to table and there's a second.
Table, you mean postpone to another meeting?
Until we get a legal opinion from counsel about the unlawful taking is what Supervisor Heisey has said, that there may be non-lawful taking here because we have denied, this board has denied 3 times the use of the sale of this property.
I don't think we denied it 3 times.
Well, that's what Supervisor Heisey has said.
So we're going to,
We had a motion, a second for table.
yeah.
For postpone. We're not going to consider it at the end of this meeting.
Right.
Okay, but she said, do you want to change the motion then?
Oh, I'm sorry, to table it to a future,
You mean to move?
move to postpone it for the opportunity of our council to look into the argument that Mr. Heisey is making relative to an unlawful taking, potentially involving a lawsuit with the township on this property.
I will second, but I'm sure you agree with me that this would also allow time for compromise.
But they can still come up with another plan.
Right.
If we vote this down today,
The motion is to postpone, second, so now we need to have a, either discussion on postponement or a vote for postponement.
Let's have a discussion. I don't think it's fair to the public who have spent, enormous amounts of time and resources to, come to meeting after meeting after meeting. They want a decision. And I think we should make a decision.
I understand that, Bob, I really do, but I also understand, as from a legal standpoint, that we may be putting the township at harm's way. It's certainly, listen, I don't necessarily believe in the argument as an attorney. I think there's some valid arguments to be made on the other side, but I think we also have a fiduciary responsibility to the public that we don't get ourselves into a potential situation where we end up in a lawsuit over this. Nobody wins with that.
You can always end up in a lawsuit. I mean, you can't let that drive your, decision-making.
We might get sued by Mr. Pastor if we can't make a decision.
Could.
Well, wait a minute here.
I might sue
No, you know what? I don't buy that. It was his argument, Mr. Heisey's argument, about the fact that we could end up in a lawsuit. So now you're telling me that if we want to postpone this so that we can have some legal advice here by our counsel, that's for naught, that anyone can sue? I know anyone can sue. I can sue anyone. I'm just saying, Mr. Heisey brought it up into the fray today, and we have to address it. At least I think we should address it.
But I think there's been time for that. If
So that you're requesting a legal opinion from Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Is that part of this?
on what specific question?
On the allegations that Supervisor
Allegations?
Heisey.
I'm just.
Okay, let's just not say
Observations.
She
allegations.
wants a risk assessment.
Listen, assertions that he made. How about assertions? Does that sound better? Assertions that you made.
Opinion.
That for us, it's an opinion, your opinion. And listen, look, at least I'm holding you to have some credence, right? Okay? I mean, at the end of the day, if you think it was worthy enough to bring in front of all of everyone that's here tonight, that we should take that in consideration, that we may have an unlawful taking in our hands because this board has denied the right for the sale of that property 3 times, which, by the way, I haven't even been here long enough to know that.
Yeah, but let's be clear, the board has not denied the right to sell that property or to use that property. The question, as Mark pointed out, the question tonight is whether we rezone or not. The property is still, the property could still be developed, it can be used. I'm sure somebody could make an economically viable project out of it.
I understand, we're not here tonight to do anything but to make an opinion, make a ruling on whether or not we want to change the zoning. Okay, but the fallout of that particular decision-making of this board, from what I understand from Supervisor Heisey, is that we could be, by denying it, and none of us know yet how all of us are going to vote, but if we turn down the proposal for that zoning, does that put us in, as a township, in harm's way for a particular argument by Northridge Church to say that you have effectually denied us the right to use our property and sell it in the way we deem necessary because you've done it 3 times?
Not to mention, we've just given them the legal argument.
I'm sure they've had it.
I know their attorney, believe me, he knows the arguments too.
I just, in my opinion, I agree with Bob. I think the residents deserve an answer today. Everybody's got their own decision-making process. They have to they have to weigh the pros, they have to weigh the cons. With all due respect, Kevin, your opinion wouldn't change my vote one way or another. I think we vote on it tonight and let's move on.
Okay, so there's still a motion on the table. Does anybody, do we want to vote on that?
Well, we have to.
The motion on the table.
We got a motion on
So
the
the
table
motion
and a
on the
second.
table is to
Postpone. Until
so-
such time that we get a legal opinion.
Okay, so take the roll.
Okay. Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
No.
Treasurer Clinton.
No.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
No.
Trustee Stewart.
No.
Supervisor Heisey.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, so now,
Call the question.
are there any other comments or questions from the public? Anybody else on the board? We really don't prefer that, yeah. So, I need a motion from somebody.
So that's on page.
There's 2 separate versions, one to approve,
203, is that the proposed motion?
one to approve, one to deny.
This one has both.
Well, so I mean, you got to pick
Strike it
one.
out.
Yeah, he's pick one, yeah.
Yeah, pick one. All right. I move to adopt resolution 2021-06-22-45, authorizing denial of the Plymouth Ridge subdivision, Northridge conditional rezoning map amendment from the R1E single family residential district to the R1H single family residential district.
Second.
Okay,
I said
so
recommend and deny.
you're recommending denial, so the motion's been made by trustee Kermy, seconded by trustee Monahan. So a yes vote is to deny, a no vote is to not deny.
To not deny. That's the way I read it.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Clerk Borba, no. Trustee Kermy.
want to deny it, so it's a yes vote?
Yes, yes denies.
Yes means no.
Yes.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
No.
Motion carries.
Okay, here you go. Thank you very much.
Leo.
No, it's my meeting,
I know.
okay?
Which Leo?
I shouldn't want to do it.
We're not doing shout outs to people in the audience. Okay, next up is public comment, limited to 3 minutes. Okay, this is public comment, just on anything in the world for 3 minutes.
Nobody has anything?
I guess we're all set then, so we're gonna move on. Yeah, come on.
No, yes, you can.
Yeah, come on.
Just a thought, I don't know if anybody considers looking into a left turn, either signal or lane at the intersection of, I guess it's back in Ann Arbor.
Oh, yes, back in Ann Arbor Road?
Road.
Yes. MDOT was scheduled to do a road resurfacing project this year, and they terminated that project. We do not know when they will revive that project. So MDOT is responsible for Ann Arbor Road because it's the old M14. And you're gonna have to contact your state rep to find out what their next move is gonna be.
Even if it's it's actually off of back, doesn't need the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, got a lot of rustling papers and stuff here right now, so let's, yeah. Okay, public comment is completed. All right, board comments, let's go around the horn. Bob, you ready?
I'm sorry, we were talking
Board
about.
comments, I'm sorry, no, I
Yeah.
didn't. You're all set?
Yeah.
Okay, John Stewart.
I think the Northridge property rezoning is ripe for mediation, compromise, and consensus. And when you have a gentleman here, Mr. Suave, there on the hallway, when you got a gentleman here like a Leo Gonzalez, I have the highest professional respect for his intelligence, sensitivity, and wisdom in cobbling together a compromise that is acceptable. You know, this is ripe for compromise and ripe for a mediation.
Okay. Jerry Vorva.
We are all good.
Mark Clinton.
Good here.
Trustee Monahan.
Good here.
Wow,
Thank you,
Chuck
everyone.
Kermy.
So I agree that this should be negotiated, but there's boundaries within planning. You can't do contract zoning, things like that. But I'm sure there's room for some discussion. Next item, what's on the agenda for, when's our next meeting?
July 13th.
July 13th. Are we doing tree or no tree?
As of now, we're doing tree.
I heard you just wait on it.
Oh, okay, well, you can vote no.
Free.
Okay, all set? All set?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good news, bad news. Good news is our federal COVID relief money has been increased to $2.83 million. And we think that we can spend it on some other items such as sidewalks and sidewalk gaps and recreation amenities, but not too many. But we do have some more flexibility than we thought that we had before.
Can we spend it on the projects this year that are ongoing right now?
No, that would be more like a supplanting, and you know, we've seen what's happened when we try to supplant current projects with future money. That's frowned upon. There'll be plenty of projects, you know, for us to do. GFL trash, I know that trash pickup is very slow right now, and that is just because it is impossible to hire people. Trash collectors are not very, we love the work that they do, but it's not a job that's in demand right now. And so between the government paying people to stay home and other better jobs out there, we have to accept the reality right now. We communicate with GFL every day. All of our trash is being picked up late. For me, my trash pickup was yesterday, and they got everything on time. Yard waste, though, they did pick up this morning. So we still have some issues with that. We are also investigating what our legal options are with Attorney Bennett under our contract with GFL with respect to service provisions and penalties for lack of service. And then finally, unfortunately, we had a Freedom of Information Act request from a resident who sought the names and addresses of all individuals who requested and received free trees last year as part of our tree program. In consultation with our attorney, we did provide a redacted list. So the list that was provided is just names only. It does not have addresses. But as we know, this is the 21st century, and it's just a speed bump if somebody wants to get your personal information. So if you received a free tree last year, and if you are harassed, contacted, bullied, or intimidated in any way, I want you to call my office because we need to know that. The individual has also requested a list of the people who are going to, who have applied and who received trees, free trees for this year. There will be a list made at some point. I will work with our attorney to see if we can have that entire list redacted. But unfortunately, I suspect that we will have to release the names of those individuals as well. I would urge people to take advantage of the tree program. We are going through the applications right now. If you please stick with the program, do not be intimidated, do not be threatened or bullied by people who are using you as victims in their political agenda. And that's all I have. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's made by Trustee Stewart.
Second.
Is there a second? Second by Trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.